All right, what's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with a preview for Week 11 of the NFL season. Probably a day late on this video, so sorry about that, but getting it up right now. Last week I came through and I did this with very little research, and we talked through the thought process, basically on the fly. That got a lot of good reviews, so we're gonna try it again. I've tried to insulate myself a little bit from most of the NFL research, or at least NFL research within the tools that I use, right? So that's what we're going to go through now. These are all the tools that I use on a weekly basis. They're available on dfsondemand.com. I don't think I mentioned it last week, but someone else pointed it out. It's half off for the rest of the year. There's a promo code. It's 50, FIFTY, that gets you half off an NFL package for the rest of the year. So let's go through this. So we've got the cheat sheet in front of us here, and as I kind of always like to do, we'll just go position by position. We'll start here with quarterbacks, and I can already see there's someone who is just jumping off the screen at us, right? It's Alex Smith. So Alex Smith at $6,700 is my highest projected quarterback. He is the 3, 4, 5, 6 most expensive quarterback. Okay, so why is Alex Smith projected so highly is my first question. So let's see if we can find this out. I'm going to go to his player profile and see if I can find him here. Okay, so first off, a couple of things here. They had a bye in week 10, so they're coming off a bye. So week 9 is the last game that he's played. Obviously, he's played pretty well, but what's actually jumping out at me is how well he's played on the road. That's these green, the lighter green colors. So if we just look at away games, he's averaging 25 DraftKings points compared to 18 at home. I wonder if that is just a benefit of being on the road. They're probably not favored as highly, the Chiefs I'm talking about. So games are closer. When teams are big favorites and they get up late in the game, they obviously run the ball more often. The opposite can happen, right? So when you're on the road and you have to throw the ball late in the game. So I'm not sure if there's anything to this, but worth noting about Alex Smith, his home road splits, and this game should be on the road. Yeah, it's at MetLife. And then I imagine the big reason for this projection is going to be that matchup there. So let's just go to the defense versus position and find the New York Giants. And what we will see is right here, they cannot stop a nosebleed, Bart Scott. That's the best quote ever. Look at this. Wow. Every quarterback has scored at least 20 DraftKings points since week 4, and it's not like there's a lot of big names on here. Wow. Last week, 25 points. Trevor Siemian scored 21. That guy isn't even a starting quarterback in the league anymore. So, needless to say, the Giants have had quite an issue defending opposing quarterbacks. So I'm not surprised that Alex Smith is projected highly, but he's got a lot of good things going for him. Okay, what else do we have here? Okay, let's look at Dak last week. I'm just going to go to the game logs real quick. So we kind of talked about Dak, and we've had this discussion a lot where we've said, if Zeke doesn't play, what's Dak going to do, right? We've had that discussion a lot. Threw it 30 times, was pretty uninspiring through the air, but he did have 6 rushes. And I know that, first of all, that's a season high, and I know it's only like 2 or 3 more than every other game, but that's also like 100% more rush attempts than he's seen in most games this year. So the extra rush attempts, maybe that is because Zeke was out and Alfred Morris wasn't particularly effective. He ran one in. He rushed for 42 yards. That 42 yards on DraftKings is the same as throwing another touchdown. So again, he offers you something a little special there. And then he's going to get the Philadelphia defense, which, quite honestly, they've been excellent against opposing running backs. Let's see what they've done against opposing quarterbacks. Oops. And I'm in the wrong spot. Here we go. So, a little bit of a mixed bag. Cam Newton and Kirk Cousins got loose. Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning had good games, but a lot of other pretty crappy games in there as well. So, looks like a little bit of a mixed bag. Dak, probably the best quarterback on this list, right, that they've seen this season. And very likely that the Cowboys are going to have to lean on Dak again this week. All right, who else do we have here? Oh, here's what we can do. Forgot about this little tool. Here's the Who's Hot tool, and I'm actually going to probably make some updates to this in the next couple days. I have a couple cool ideas, but let's just look at quarterbacks, and let's try to narrow the range down a little bit, right? Like, so let's just do weeks 5 to 10. That's not bad, right? That's pretty cool. So we're looking for players who are either below the trend line, right of the trend line, or preferably both, right? So Carson Wentz is in a really good spot here amongst his peers, outscoring basically his salary peers is what this is. A couple other names. So Jared Goff, no surprise that he shows up there. We can look at him in a second. Here's Tom Brady, which is like unfortunately kind of on the wrong side of all of this. No one else really jumps out. Let me see if I can get like more recent. We can find a smaller sample size and maybe get some guys that are really jumping out. Okay, Carson Wentz, no surprise. Actually, what is Carson Wentz? How much is he? So let's go look at Wentz and Goff. All right, here's Wentz at 7,200. He's been awesome. That Dallas D all banged up. I'm not sure how they're going to stop that Philadelphia offense. And here's Jared Goff, $6,500. Oh, yeah, that's your bad matchup. You'd be a glutton for punishment, I think, if you want to try to roll out Jared Goff against the Minnesota Vikings. Let's just look at this real quick. Yeah, here you go. Outside of last week, outside of the 31 points that Kirk Cousins dropped last week, no one else this year has snapped 20, and most in the teens or less. So this is a really poor matchup for Jared Goff. Where's this game at? Am I crazy? Why can't I find it? Oh my God, I'm looking right at it. Okay. It's in Minnesota. Jeez, that was bad. Sorry. It's in Minnesota. So Goff having to go on the road and face what is likely the worst defense. I think it might be a little bit of a fool's errand to try to roster him this week. If you are looking for a little bit of value, who would be like the cheapest guy? Okay, this is actually kind of interesting. So Matt Ryan against Seattle. So on paper, you're like, crap, Seattle, that's not a great matchup. No Richard Sherman. That's of note. Where is this game at? Tell me it's in Atlanta. It's in Seattle. Not ideal. And then let's just see what Seattle has done recently. Deshaun Watson had that big game. Other than that, they've been pretty good. But I'm not – I mean, we've talked about Matt Ryan a couple times this year. I'm kind of still like a believer, right? But the Richard Sherman injury doesn't show up on paper here. I would obviously like it more if they were at home, but I think there's worse that you can do. I mean, look at his peers. This is the reigning MVP. The reigning MVP is the same or is $100 more than Eli Manning. That's kind of crazy. So worth noting there. Okay, let's kick it to running backs real quick. All right, Melvin Gordon, highest projected running back. Interesting. Let's go take a peek. So here's Melvin Gordon's season, and actually, I'd prefer to look at his game logs because I want to see I want to see usage here. I want to see how many carries he's getting. Excuse me. Okay, so hasn't had a 20 carry game in 3 weeks. Had 2 the previous weeks before that. Interesting. Okay, and the matchup this week with Buffalo, I'm assuming is what is going to be the reason that he is so high here. So Buffalo against running backs. Let's see. Oh, okay. Doesn't help that every New Orleans running back shredded them last week. But it's been a trend, right? So, oh my gosh, the last 3 weeks, some running back against Buffalo has scored at least 25 DraftKings points. And there's been 4 of them in the last 3 weeks. So, Buffalo, I bet you if we do this, let me see if I can do this. Just weeks. It's a little wonky. We got to do it like this. 7, 8, 9, or 8, 9, 10 gives us, I bet you Buffalo's the worst against running backs. Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. Oakland's even worse. Look at that. Oakland. That was only 2 games, though. Buffalo's played 3. Those are not good numbers, obviously. So Melvin Gordon, who is going to be the workhorse for Los Angeles in a really good matchup at home. That's not bad. I wonder what the line of that game is. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. While I'm pulling that up on my screen, the New Orleans running backs, I assume, are going to be pretty popular, right? They had 5 rushing touchdowns in the first, or I guess they had 4 rushing touchdowns and Drew Brees had 1. In like the first 3 quarters last week. I really like them long term, like investing in Alvin Kamara. I like Mark Ingram. I like all my season long leagues. Like, that's great. A little bit of chasing points this week, I would assume. Price goes up significantly. Very unlikely that they have a similar type game. Though, GPPs, those are the types of situations I'm trying to get away from. Melvin Gordon, Chargers are 4-point favorites with a 43.5 point total. So that total is kind of middle of the pack. And then at least the Chargers are favorites. So you can get a running back who is a workhorse on a team that's expected to win. But look at his game logs. I mean, I would not trust this guy in a cash game just because of how all over the place his game logs are. So I'd stick to probably GPPs only. Let's see what's going on with Duke Johnson here. $4,400 pops up at 17.6 projection. Again, I'm assuming this is just because of the matchup here, right? So here's Jacksonville, one of the worst in the league against opposing running backs. Austin Eckler, well, he snapped one off at the end of that game, I think. Let's see what else here. Jets, 2 running backs got them. I mean, this actually isn't all that bad. I was expecting it to be a lot worse than this. Let's see what Duke Johnson has even done recently. Okay. I mean, this isn't bad for a guy who's $4,400, right? Like, this is 3.5 times value. This is 2.5. This is 3.5. This is what? 4.5. I mean, okay, he's actually had some pretty impressive games. Let's check the logs. I'm assuming it's because of the PPR aspect of this, right? Yeah. So here's Duke Johnson heavily involved in the passing game. 16 receptions over the course of the last 3 weeks. He still hasn't scored a receiving touchdown. He actually still hasn't scored any touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. I'm actually pretty surprised to see his production despite not finding the end zone. That's pretty good. $4,400. I'm not... Hell, that's not bad. What I do think this cheat sheet, and I've said this about my NBA product as well, I think it does an okay job at the higher salary players, but I think it does a really good job at the value plays. The NBA sheet takes into account projected minutes played for the night, which helps. This one just really identifies guys trending upwards with recent form and good matchups. And then when you get a guy at $4,400, like, we've probably not had a guy priced $4,400 as a top 5 projected at any position this year. That's probably the first time this year. So I think that's why it's noteworthy. I will remove Zeke from this player list because he's not playing this week. What else do we got? Let's look at these for running backs. Okay. This is confused. There is another David Johnson in the league that is giving my database fits. I will fix that. Ignore that. So here we go. So Alvin Kamara jumps off Mark Ingram. Okay, Todd Gurley. So kind of a similar situation with Jared Goff. Just going to be a really tough matchup. Let's see how Minnesota has done against the running backs. Yeah. Really, really good. That's a really bad matchup, isn't it? Let's see. How does that compare against the rest of the league? The absolute worst. I mean, it's so interesting. Like, this is when you have, what is it, an immovable force versus whatever. Like, you've got guys who are playing so well. Jared Goff, Todd Gurley getting a ton of touches, matching up against the #1 defense. Like, what wins out? I tend to say the defense does. I think that's more consistent in results. With that being said, if you wanted to roster those guys, I couldn't blame you, but you need to understand the risk you're taking on. And this is actually something that came up in the comments a little bit, so I'll address it. Just because you choose someone and they don't have a good game doesn't mean that was the wrong decision. It is very easy to say, okay, this person's a GPP flyer. And then if they don't go off, you just kind of shrug and say, well, I said they were a GPP flyer. There are still characteristics of these types of players that you need to be looking for. So if you're saying someone's a GPP flyer and there's just like literally no chance that they go off, they're not having enough volume, they're not trending in any direction, they're not in a good matchup, whatever, that is literally just throwing a dart. But there are types of players, and Todd Gurley kind of in this situation where really, really bad matchup, but the production has been so good. Wouldn't trust him in cash games, but what if he snaps off a couple of touchdowns? And even so, there's profiles of players like that even if you play them and you are incorrect, or I'm sorry, let me phrase that. If you play them and they don't play well, they don't produce, it doesn't necessarily mean you were incorrect. It just kind of means like it didn't happen this time, right? Like it still could have been a correct or a plus expected value decision over time. Okay. Outside of that, Matt Forte. Whoops, wrong one there. Let's see what Matt Forte's done recently. Okay, that's what it is. So he snapped off last week, but even so, last 4 weeks at this price, so no more than that can't be right. $8,400 in week 8. All right, sorry about that. My computer ran updates and restarted itself, so let's try this again. I think I was talking about Matt Forte, and basically, I don't think this salary is correct. I think it was adding his FanDuel and his DraftKings, so I'll check that. But the production is, so last 4 weeks, basically 3 or 4 times value, quite often 6 last week. So another guy trending in the right direction. Let's keep it moving with wide receivers here. DeAndre Hopkins, you get a pretty good discount now that his quarterback is a scarecrow. Let's look at DeAndre here. All right, so here's what's really interesting, right? So the guy gets up to $9,200 after the monster 39-point game, goes for 20. Drops down to $7,500 and scores 21 DraftKings points, gets 14 targets. So basically tells you no matter who plays quarterback for the Texans, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be a target monster. He gets Arizona this week at only $6,100. Wow. Okay, let's see what Arizona's been up to. Our friends in Arizona, well, that's probably why the price is so cheap. They're kind of middle of the road, a little better than average against opposing wideouts. Has anybody gone nuts against them? Not really. They've defended that. Haven't allowed a 20-point wide receiver since week 1 when they allowed 2 of them. Pretty interesting. So, wow, okay. Maybe I haven't realized how good the Arizona defense has been, but $6,100 for a guy who most certainly leads the league in targets, right? Yeah, there he is. More than Antonio Brown, who is $3,000 more expensive. Obviously, there are different players, but I mean, the production, look at this. 106 targets, 101, 58 receptions, 60 receptions, 803 yards, 882 yards. DeAndre's found the end zone a lot more, which is a little bit unsustainable season long, but I think we'll be just fine on a week by week basis, right? So wow, yeah, pretty good price on DeAndre. Even with the quarterback concerns, they're just going to chuck it up to him, it looks like. All right, who else do we have here? Marvin Jones has been really impressive, especially because he's almost always cheaper than Golden Tate. Michael Crabtree. Can we get a Michael Crabtree bounce back game? I mean, he's got the matchup with New England, who's been just decimated by everyone. So Michael Crabtree, after this stretch of 3 straight touchdowns, I mean, and even then he didn't really do much outside of that. He's been very, very quiet. I'm not sure how sustainable that is. This is a top-tier wide receiver in a really good matchup. Those are the types of situations I'd prefer to buy on. Only $5,900. That's really good. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, who we talked about and I like, he's kind of a little big play dependent. 6,000. Like, these guys aren't in the same ballpark. Michael Crabtree seems like a pretty good buy there. Let's look at wide receivers, and we'll just narrow it down to a little bit more recently. Okay, there's that Marvin Jones. That makes a lot of sense. Here's Juju Smith-Schuster, who, again, a little dependent on the big play for me. Robbie Anderson continues to improve, as we've talked about. Robert Woods. So that's the kind of the LA Rams situation we've got going on. Who else? Interesting. Okay, I'm just trying to get a feel for this. I do want to look at Dez and what he did last week, just because, you know, the whole no Zeke thing. I wanted to see how many times they threw it to him. So 8 targets. He only converted on 4 of them. Sorry, I'll move out of the way here. He's been up and down all week, or all year. It's kind of been a little disappointing, quite honestly, to be, especially like a season-long Dez owner. He's just kind of hasn't really put it all together. And let's just see. Larry Fitz pops up here. That makes a lot of sense. A couple guys you might want to fade. I mean, Mike Evans. Yeah, that's not great. Here's Marvin Jones, okay. So that did pop up as value. Anybody else down here? Will Fuller, again, a little bit touchdown dependent for me. Still pretty high on Kenny Stills as more of a longer-term play. So real quick, I'll just see if I can find Kenny Stills and see what he's been up to. So he had that big game in Week 7, but what's the price this week? Only $44,000. Wow, against Tampa Bay? Let's see that. Yeah, there you go. So here's Tampa Bay, 5th worst defense against opposing wide receivers this year. I kind of like Kenny Stills. I'm fairly optimistic on him. And then tight ends, we'll wrap up with those guys. This is Travis Kelce week, right? Like whatever stinking tight end you want, put me in at tight end, run me out against the Giants. I'm probably going to catch a touchdown. I'm not really kidding. Let's look at opposing tight ends versus the Giants. How cool is it that we can do this? I love this tool, by the way. All right, here's opposing tight ends against the Giants. basically a touchdown in week 10, touchdown in week 9, touchdown in week 7. 8 was the bye. 6, 5, 4, 3. Yeah, they've literally given up a touchdown every single week. Really, really bad, right? They've given up double-digit points 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 times this year. Again, basically every single week. Not to mention the fact that Travis Kelce is a premier tight end. So Chalk City, Travis Kelce, but I'll be paying for it. And then some of these guys we've talked about quite a bit. I mean, it's Cameron Brate. It's Zach Ertz back this week. Here's this is interesting. Tyler Kroft. Let's go look at him. Oh, there you go. Okay, so that big game in week 4, but has been pretty consistent. So a dud in week 10, but again, he's $2,900. He was 3,000, 3,000, and 3,900, and basically returned 3 or 4 times value in each one of those games. So that's actually not bad. If you want to just either play 2 tight ends like Kroft and then like flex Kelce or something, that's interesting. Or if you just want to absolutely spend what is essentially the min, Tyler Kroft is not a bad option. So I could see him finding his way into some of my lineups if I didn't want to pay up for one of these big boys. But let's look at the who's hot chart. Yeah, Evan Ingram, that makes sense. Jimmy Graham's up here. Okay, just a couple guys that we kind of talked about. Cool, that works for me. Sweet, so there it is. That's the preview for week 11. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions or comments, tweet me. It's at DFS On Demand, or leave a comment below. Talk to you guys soon. See ya.